Every single day, millions of people wake up, go to work, come home tired, and go to sleep with the same silent fear buried deep in their chest. The fear that no matter how hard they work, they will never actually get ahead. And the worst part? Most of them are right. Not because they are lazy, not because they are stupid, but because nobody ever taught them the one thing that actually separates people who build wealth from people who just survive. And I only figured this out when I had exactly $100 left in my account. If you're interested in money, finance, or changing your financial future, like this video and subscribe right now, because what you are about to learn can change the way you see money forever. So let me take you back to January of 2026. I remember sitting at my kitchen table on a Tuesday night, staring at my phone. My bank balance was showing $107. Not $107,000, not a $700. $107. That was everything I had after paying rent, groceries, and the electric bill. And I had this moment, this almost embarrassing moment, where I thought to myself, if I died tomorrow, I would leave behind nothing. No savings, no investments, no financial cushion for anyone, just debt and a used laptop. Now, I know some of you watching this right now are sitting in that exact same chair. Maybe the number in your account is different, but the feeling is the same. That hollow, heavy feeling that says, I am working so hard and going absolutely nowhere. I want you to stay with me through this entire video, because what I discovered next was something I genuinely wish someone had told me 10 years earlier, and it started with a decision that felt almost ridiculous at the time. I decided to take $100, literally my grocery money for the week, and try to invest it, not because I had a plan, not because I had done deep research, but because I was tired of being afraid of money. I was tired of watching people online talk about stocks and index funds and compound interest like it was some secret club I was not allowed to join. So I opened my phone, downloaded an investing app, and put in $100. And then I sat there wondering whether I had just made the dumbest decision of my life or the most important one. But what happened over the next few weeks changed the way I think about money completely. Here's the thing that nobody tells you when you are growing up in a regular household. And I mean regular, not poor, not rich, just regular. Parents who work normal jobs, who clip coupons sometimes, who stress about the car repair bill. Nobody in that world talks about investing. They talk about saving. They say, put money away for a rainy day. They say, do not spend more than you earn. And that is good advice, but it is incomplete advice. And incomplete advice, when it comes to money, is almost as dangerous as no advice at all, because it leaves you doing just enough to feel responsible while missing the actual game entirely. Let me explain what I mean. And I need you to really sit with this, because this one idea alone is worth watching this entire video for. When you save money in a regular bank account, your money is basically sleeping. In 2026, most standard savings accounts are paying somewhere between 0.5% and maybe 4% interest annually, depending on the bank and the type of account. That sounds okay until you find out that inflation, which is basically the invisible cost of things getting more expensive every year, has been running at around 3% or higher. So if your money is just sitting in a savings account earning 2% and prices are going up by 3%, your money is actually losing purchasing power every single year. You are saving, but you are going backwards. And most people have no idea this is happening to them. This is where most people fail without even realizing it. They feel responsible because they are saving. They feel financially mature, but the math is working against them silently every single month, year after year. And by the time they are 50 or 60 and realize their savings cannot cover the life they imagined, it is almost too late to fix it. But here is the other side of that equation. And this is the part that I started to understand when I put that $100 into the market. Investing, even imperfect, small, beginner-level investing, puts your money to work in a completely different way. Instead of your money sitting still, it joins the economy. It becomes part of real companies, real products, real growth. And over time, the returns from investing have historically been much higher than any savings account can offer. The US stock market, on average, over the past century, has returned roughly 7 to 10% per year after adjusting for inflation. That is not guaranteed. That is historical average. But the difference between 2% in a savings account and 8% in a diversified investment over 30 years is not just a little difference. It is the difference between barely getting by and having real financial freedom. Now, I know what some of you are thinking right now. You are thinking, okay, but I'm not rich. I do not have thousands of dollars to invest. I barely have 100. And that is exactly the point I want to make. Because this is the exact lie that keeps most regular people out of investing their entire lives. The idea that you need a lot of money to start investing is one of the most damaging financial myths of our generation. And I am going to prove it to you with my own story. But first, you need to understand something that changed everything for me when I first heard it. There's a concept called compound interest. I know you've probably heard that word before, maybe in school, maybe in some article somewhere. But I want you to feel it, not just understand it. Albert Einstein supposedly called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world. Whether he really said that or not, the math behind it is genuinely mind-bending. Here's a simple way to think about it. Imagine you invest $100 and it grows by 8% in the first year. Now you have $108. The next year, that $108 grows by 8%. Now you have $116.64 SOLR. Or not just 116, because the extra $8 you earned last year also earned interest this year. Then the year after that, $116.64 grows by 8%, giving you $125.97. Do you see what is happening? The growth is feeding itself. Your money is making money, and that money is making more money. It is slow at first, almost invisibly slow. But after 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, the numbers become something that most people can barely believe when they see them for the first time. If you invested $100 per month starting at age 20 and earned an average of 8% per year, by the time you were 60, you would have over $350,000 from $100 a month. That is the power of time combined with compound growth. And here is the heartbreaking part. Most people do not start until they are 35 or 40, which cuts the result dramatically. Not because they did not have $100 a month, but because nobody told them this was possible. Nobody showed them the math. Nobody made it feel real and personal and urgent. That is what I want this video to do for you today. So back to my $100 experiment in January 2026. I opened the investing app, and immediately I was faced with choices that felt overwhelming. There were individual stocks, there were ETFs, there were crypto options, there were bonds, and I had no idea where to start. I remember reading about some hot tech company that was supposedly going to triple in value. A friend had texted me about a specific stock he was convinced was the next big thing, and part of me, the part that wanted to get rich fast and fix everything, wanted to just throw that $100 at it and hope. But I did something different. And this decision, small as it sounds, is actually the decision that separates most successful long-term investors from the people who try investing once, lose money, and never try again. Instead of picking one company, I put my $100 into what is called an index fund. Specifically, I chose a fund that tracks the S&P 500, which is basically a basket of the 500 largest companies in the United States: Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Berkshire Hathaway, all of them together in one investment. When one company has a bad year, the others help balance it out. When the whole economy grows, your investment grows with it. You're not betting on one horse, you're betting on the entire race. And this is where most beginners get it completely wrong. They try to pick winners, they try to time the market, they read Reddit threads or watch flashy YouTube videos about the next hot stock, and they put their money in based on excitement rather than strategy. And sometimes they win once, which makes it worse, because it makes them feel like they have skill when they really just got lucky. And then they bet bigger, and they lose it all. I have watched this happen to people I know personally. A guy I went to college with turned $5,000 into $23,000 in crypto during 2021, felt invincible, put everything back in. By 2022, he was down to $1,800. That is not investing. That is gambling with extra steps. The boring truth, and I mean genuinely boring, unsexy, not going to make a viral video truth, is that slow, consistent, diversified investing beats almost every other strategy over the long run. Not because it is exciting, but because it removes the biggest enemy of your financial future, which is you, your emotions, your panic when prices drop, your greed when prices rise. Index fund investing removes most of those decisions. You just keep putting money in, month after month, and let time do the work. It sounds almost too simple. That simplicity is exactly why most people do not believe it works. Now here is where my experiment gets really interesting, and I want you to pay attention to this part because it reveals something about the psychology of money that I had never understood before. Within the first 2 weeks of investing that $100, the market dropped. Not massively, but my $100 became about $94, and I felt something in my stomach, a tightening. A voice in my head that said, "See, you made a mistake. You should have just kept that money. Now you lost it." And the instinct, the deeply human, entirely normal instinct, was to sell, to take my $94 back before it became $80, to protect what little I had. And this moment, right here, is the moment where most first-time investors quit. Not after huge losses, after small ones. Because the fear is not proportional to the amount of money. It is proportional to how unfamiliar and scary the situation feels. When you do not understand what you're doing, any loss feels catastrophic. Any dip feels like the beginning of total collapse. And so people sell. They lock in the loss. And then the market recovers, as it almost always has historically recovered. And they watch from the sidelines, kicking themselves, swearing they will get back in at the right time. But the right time never comes, because they are waiting for certainty that does not exist. I did not sell. And here's why. Because I had done enough reading to understand one crucial thing. Short-term market drops are completely normal. Terrifying in the moment, but normal. In fact, there's a drop of at least 10% in the stock market almost every single year, and a drop of 20% or more, which sounds catastrophic. Happens roughly every 3 to 5 years on average. And every single time in history, over a long enough period, the market has recovered and gone on to reach new highs. Every single time. That does not mean it will happen forever, but it does mean that if you are investing for 10, 20, or 30 years, temporary drops are not disasters. They are actually opportunities. Think of it this way. Imagine your favorite store announced a 15% sale on everything. You would not panic. You would feel excited. You would buy more. That is the rational response to a market dip for a long-term investor. The stock you loved at $100 is now $85. Nothing about the company changed. The sale is temporary. Buy more if you can. But our brains do not process investment losses the same way we process store discounts. Our brains process investment losses as threats. And that threat response, that ancient survival-wired fear, costs regular investors enormously over their lifetimes. And nobody talks about this part. They talk about which stocks to buy. They talk about when to get in and out. But almost nobody teaches the emotional side of investing. The mental discipline required to sit on your hands when your portfolio is red, and every instinct is screaming at you to do something. That discipline, more than any stock-picking skill or market knowledge, is what separates people who actually build wealth from people who try investing and give up. By the end of 3 months, my $100 had grown to about $109. A 9% return in 3 months, which I was told is actually exceptional and not typical. Usually, 8% over an entire year is what you are aiming for. But the number itself was not the point. The point was what I learned by watching that $100. I learned that the market moves in ways I cannot predict. I learned that my emotional reaction to those movements is a much bigger threat to my money than the movements themselves. And I learned that investing is not a skill you deploy perfectly from day one. It is a habit you build and a mindset you develop over time. But here is what I want you to think about right now, because this is the real lesson underneath the lesson. Most people are not poor because they lack opportunity. Most people in the developed world have at least some access to investing. Apps that let you start with as little as $1 exist right now. The barrier to entry has never been lower in human history. So why are the majority of people still not investing? Why are most salary workers in their 40s and 50s still paycheck to paycheck with almost nothing saved for retirement? Are no investments, no financial cushion? If the information is available, if the tools are accessible, if the math is this clear, why are so many people still stuck? And the answer to that question shook me when I really sat with it. It is not ignorance. Well, it is partially ignorance. But the deeper thing is identity. Most people do not see themselves as investors. When they think of an investor, they picture someone in a suit, someone with a portfolio, someone who uses words like asset allocation and dividend yield and understands them. Hey, do not picture a 24-year-old with $107 in her bank account sitting at a kitchen table in a rented apartment. They do not picture themselves. And because they do not picture themselves as investors, they never start. And because they never start, compound interest never works for them. And because compound interest never works for them, they spend 40 years working hard and still end up financially fragile. This is the real tragedy. Not that investing is too complicated, but that people have been made to feel it is not for them. Let me tell you about a woman named Sarah. She is not a real person. She is a combination of 3 different people I have spoken to over the years, and I am sharing her story because it captures something painfully true. Sarah is 34 years old. She works as a school teacher. She earns a decent salary, not amazing, but enough to live comfortably if she manages it well. She has been meaning to start investing for years. She follows a couple of finance accounts on Instagram. She has the apps downloaded. But she never actually starts because she is waiting for the perfect moment. Waiting until she pays off one more credit card. Waiting until she gets that small raise she was promised. Waiting until she feels like she really understands the market. Sarah is going to wait until she is 45. And when she finally starts investing at 45 instead of 34, she will lose 11 years of compound growth. Those 11 years, in terms of the long-term outcome of her investments, could represent hundreds of thousands of dollars she will never have. And when she is 65 and thinking about retiring, she will do the math and feel that familiar heaviness, the sense that she worked hard her whole life and still somehow missed it. She will not understand exactly where she went wrong, because from the outside, her life will look responsible. She saved some money, she avoided major debt, she worked steadily, and yet the invisible math was running against her the entire time. The perfect moment to start investing is always earlier than now, and the second best perfect moment is right now, not next month, not after the next paycheck, now. Because every day you wait, you are not just missing returns, you are missing the compound returns on those returns. You are missing the returns on the returns on the returns. The delay costs more than most people ever calculate. And most people never calculate it because it is uncomfortable to look at. Here is something I want you to do after you finish watching this video. Just as an exercise, go online and search for a compound interest calculator. Type in how much you could invest per month, even if it is $50 or $100. Put in 8% annual return, and put in the number of years until you want to retire. Then look at the number, really look at it. Then change the start date from today to 5 years from now and see how much that delay costs you. That number, that gap between starting today versus starting 5 years from now, is one of the most motivating and sobering things a person can see. Because suddenly the cost of inaction becomes real. It becomes a number with commas in it, and it stops being abstract. Now, I want to be honest with you about some of the real risks and realities of investing, because this is not a video about getting rich quick. And if you watch videos that promise you will double your money in 6 months or turn $100 into $10,000 by following some secret strategy, please close those videos. Those videos are not teaching you investing. They are selling you a dream that will cost you money. Real investing is slower. Real investing involves periods of loss and uncertainty. Real investing requires you to trust a process even when it feels wrong. But real investing, done consistently over time, works. And fake investing, chasing hot tips and trend following and panic buying whatever is viral this week, destroys more regular people's savings than almost anything else. There are also real things you should take care of before you start investing aggressively. Things like high interest debt. If you have credit card debt charging you 20% interest, paying that off first is literally a guaranteed 20% return on your money. Nothing in the stock market guarantees you that. You should also have some emergency savings, 3 to 6 months of expenses in cash, before you start putting serious money into the market. Because if an emergency hits and you have no cash buffer, you will be forced to sell your investments at whatever price the market happens to be at that moment, which might be a terrible price. The sequence of when you invest matters. Get the foundation right first. But once that foundation is in place, once the high interest debt is gone and the emergency fund is built, every dollar that goes into a diversified long-term investment is a dollar working for your future. And here is something that I think about a lot. Every dollar you save and invest at age 25 is worth roughly 16 times more at age 65 than a dollar you save at age 25 and just leave in a savings account. 16 times. That single dollar of investment, given 4 decades of compound growth at average market returns, becomes a completely different financial reality. That is the game. That is the thing the school system never taught us. That is the thing most parents did not know to pass down. 3 months after I put in that first $100, I put in another $100, then another. I made it automatic. Every paycheck, a fixed amount, went straight into my index fund before I could think about spending it. Out of sight, out of mind, but working for me, silently in the background. And something interesting happened. I stopped feeling anxious about money in the same way. Not because I suddenly had a lot of it, but because for the first time in my adult life, I had a system. I had a direction. Money was no longer just something that flowed in and out of my life without my control. I was telling it where to go. I was making it work. And that feeling, that small, quiet confidence, is worth more than the actual dollar amount growing in the account. Because here is the deeper truth, the one that does not fit on a motivational poster. Building wealth is not just about money. It is about becoming the kind of person who thinks about the future seriously. It is about developing patience in a world that is addicted to instant gratification. It is about learning to be uncomfortable with short-term uncertainty for the sake of long-term security. Those character traits, patience, discipline, long-term thinking, they do not just help you in investing. They change how you approach your career, your relationships, your decisions. The financial habit shapes the person, and the person shapes the life. I want you to think about where you are right now, not just financially. Where are you in terms of what you believe is possible for you? Do you believe that you, with your current income, your current circumstances, your current level of knowledge, could build real financial stability over the next decade? Or do you believe that investing and wealth building are for other people, people with better jobs, better starts, better luck? Because that belief, more than anything else, will determine your financial future. Not the stock market, not the economy, not interest rates. Your belief about what is possible for someone like you. I started with $100 because that was all I had. And I want to be honest, that $100 is not going to make me a millionaire by itself. But the habit it started, the knowledge it forced me to build, the shift in identity it created, those things have been worth far more than any specific dollar amount. I now invest every single month without thinking about it. I understand what I own and why I own it. I no longer panic when the market drops. I no longer feel like finance is a secret language I was not invited to speak. And that transformation from financially anxious to financially literate and intentional happened because I took one uncomfortable step with $100 on one Tuesday night. You do not need to be rich to start. You need to start to become financially capable. You do not need to have it all figured out before you begin. You need to begin in order to figure it out. The first step is imperfect, and that is exactly how it should be. What matters is that you take it. What matters is that you stop waiting for the right moment, the right amount, the right level of knowledge, and just decide that your future financial self is worth $100 in one decision today. Most people will read this, feel inspired for a day or two, and then go back to the same patterns, the same spending, the same avoiding, the same waiting for someday, and someday will become never, and never will become retirement with not enough, and not enough will become the same quiet fear that has followed them their entire life. But some of you, and I believe this genuinely, some of you are going to do something different. You're going to close this video, open an app, and make a first move. Not because it is guaranteed to work perfectly, but because staying still is a choice too, and staying still has a cost you can now calculate. The single most powerful financial decision you can make today is not which stock to buy or which app to use or how much to invest. It is simply to decide that your financial future matters enough to begin, right now, with whatever you have, imperfect and uncertain, and exactly one step ahead of where you were yesterday. If you learned something new today, make sure to subscribe to Money Insights and like this video. More powerful financial truths are coming next.